Okay, this describes how sales orders are treated within BVEssentials. So we have several tabs across the top here. So under orders, we have a setting if you want to separate the orders by division. This means that if a person is logged into a certain division, then they will only see sales orders for that division. And to see a different division, they'll have to switch divisions to see them. And here we can allow user selectable kit components. So normally a kit is sold and automatically it consumes the items and sells the top assembly item or the finished product item. But here, if this is checked, then it instead explodes all the contents of the kit onto the order. Match lowest price in price matrix. So if the customer has a price on an item and they may get it discounted in different ways, maybe they got a product code discount and then maybe a specific price for the item. It checks all the different methods of pricing and makes sure the customer gets the lowest possible price. Use the customer's default warehouse. So in a customer setup, you put the warehouse on the customer. If you uncheck this, then it will use the user's warehouse as opposed to the customer's warehouse. Using serialized lot and serial number costing, if this is checked, sales history will have recorded the cost of the actual serial number or lot number as it was received. Its cost will be posted to the sales history. General ledger will always use average, but for commission purposes or from sales reporting purposes, it'll use a serial number cost for it. Serial lot number selling, as you receive an item, you can set the sell price for each serial number. That way each one can have its own price. This is especially useful if one item can cost different prices from your vendor based on configurations. It can have a different selling price as well. Use cost from inventory for non-physical items. If this is checked, it'll behave like Business Vision where it picks the cost from the non-physical item out of the inventory item. If this is unchecked, it will always put 0 as the cost on the order and allow the user to type in a manual cost. This is for allowing over committing of inventory. If you set to prohibit, it prohibits overcommitting of inventory, so you cannot go into negative. And always ship means that it disables the order and back order quantity. You don't even see them on the order, and it always ships just like point of sale does. This is requiring a salesperson on an order. So if you create an order, you must put a salesperson on it. Same thing here with territories. It must have it if this is checked. This one defaults the salesperson with the login ID if the salesperson is blank. So if you match up your login IDs along with your salesperson ID, it will automatically put the login ID if there was no salesperson on the customer when it was added to the sales order. Required date is number of days before an order is required. So if an order gets created today, it'll put a required date on it of 3 days from now if I put 3 here. Warning if the price of an item is 0. So if you add an item to an order and you don't put a price on it, it'll warn you if that is checked. Automatically update the customer price table. What this does is every time I create an order and save it, the price that I sold to the customer will automatically put into the customer's specific pricing or the price matrix table. You must be careful with this setting because if one day you give them 1 for no charge, it will put a 0 price into the price table and not charge them for it that time around. Next setting is when it does the updating of prices, that it records it for the shipping address only. So if you give the special price to a ship to location, then it will not give it to any of the other locations, just the one it was saved for. Under the invoicing and process tab, enable process status. So BVEssentials has the process button inside the order if this is enabled. If it's not enabled, then there is only an invoice button and a print button and not a process. Process in BVEssentials means that the order has been shipped and the status of the order gets changed to processed. We also have a shipping button inside the order if this is turned on, and it turns the order into a shipped status and prints a picking ticket. Prohibiting processing orders twice. If this is checked, then once an order has been processed, it cannot be processed again, therefore not able to print a packing slip again or picking ticket again. There is user settings to override this if a person needs to be able to reopen that order. User selectable invoice numbers, similar to in Business Vision, where if you set the next invoice number to 0000, then it allows you to type in your own numbers. We do it differently. If this is checked, then we still use the sequence numbers that Business Vision is set up for, but allow the user to type in a different invoice number when they first create the order. So if they are using a sequential number in most cases, but somebody does some hand orders or hand invoices that they've passed to the customer with an invoice number on them, they're able to manually change an invoice number on some of the orders, but don't have to do it on all of them. Whether processed orders are locked after they're created, and this is a setting that can be overridden by user. Zero the freight after invoicing. So if an order has a back order on it and you put a freight amount on it and you invoice it, if this is checked, then the freight amount gets zeroed out so that when the back order that stays behind will not have that freight on it anymore. You have to put it back on again. Batch invoicing versus live invoicing. Live invoice is the way Business Vision does. As soon as you hit the invoice button, it posts to all the ledgers, sales history, general ledger, accounts receivable, inventory. If you set to batching, then what happens is that the invoice gets printed and can be sent to the customer, but it has not yet been posted to the ledgers. And at day end or next day, you can batch select a whole group of invoices that already have invoice numbers on them and post them. If you have security, the user can actually edit an invoice even after it's been invoiced before it's been posted. If using that setting, you must be very careful to not print an invoice, send it to a customer with a different amount without the customer knowing about it, because they will get two invoices with two different amounts on it with the same number. BVEssentials does have a much better credit processing system than Business Vision does. If you turn this on, it requires that authorization to happen. We have a date stamp and user stamp of who credited or who gave the credit authorization. And we can have it set so that checks the limit when processing the orders. So that therefore, when an order packing slip's been printed, it checks the credit at that time. You can also make it check their terms to make sure that it checks the order to see the customer, see if they're over their terms that have been set up for them. Credit checking when saving. This actually checks the order when you save it, as opposed to before you printing the packing slip where we did under processing here. And then we also can do a credit check based on the ordered quantity as opposed to the shipped quantity. If it's a shipped quantity that's being checked and the back orders do come in later on, it's not much good that it only checked for a couple of dollars if indeed the order was worth much more. Allow fill back orders on a processed. We have a fill back order button within the system that you can highlight an order and tell it to fulfill the orders and move everything to shipped if it can now indeed fill the order. But an order, once it's been shipped and processed, you may not want to do this. Okay, so using a suffix to manage back orders, what happens here, if you turn this on, when the order first gets created, it gets a number followed by a dash and then followed by a 0. If you invoice this order, and it has a back order on it, the order number changes to a -1 on the end of it as a suffix. If it gets back ordered again, it gets a -2, and then 3 and all the way up to 0 or to 9, and then A through Z. So you can back order on an order up to 36 times. Reset the phase of an invoice with back orders. So when you have a back order and the order has a phase on it, which are user defined and described in another video, you can have it so that it sets the phase back to the default phase when an order has a back order on it. Under surcharges, we can charge a surcharge on each order, and that can be based on percentages of a product code. So if you wanted to charge 5% of all labor as shop supplies, and then you could set that up. And that is each product code. If you go into product code setup and edit it, you can set what the surcharge should be. So if on the labor product code you set it to 5%, you can also then now say that there's a minimum of $5 and a maximum of $50, and we want that to get posted to a certain GL account, and we want it to be called surcharge on the bottom of the order. You can also tell it whether your taxes apply to this particular item here too. Some people use this for fuel surcharge. They can change this to the word fuel surcharge. And then on the bottom of the order, that's what will appear is those words, and it will charge a percentage of that to the customer on the order for each of the product codes that are selected. Okay, under messages, you can type a warning message here if the price is too low for a particular product code. So if I type in price too low, then what will happen is I can display this in sales orders and or point of sale. Then if I've dropped the price too low that falls below the accepted margin for this particular product code, then it will pop up this message. We can also display a warning when overcommitting in point of sale. Point of sale typically will just ship the product and will allow it to go negative, and you want a warning displayed that it's going to do that. We also have a warning that when a duplicate purchase order has been used, so if a customer gives you a purchase order that has previously been used, it will check open sales orders and open purchase or sales history to see if that number has been used in the past and pop a warning for it. It will allow you to still use it, but it will just warn you. Under miscellaneous, in the point of sale section, do you want to always prompt for a customer or use a default cash customer that can be used? Under accumulate items in point of sale, if you scan the same item or type the same item more than once, it will just change the quantity instead of adding the item back onto the slip again. The POS multiplier, this is typically an asterisk or a plus. Whatever you put here, if you're typing an item in point of sale and you type asterisk 10 and then scan the part number, it will put the item in there 10 times. Retain the order number when you copy or credit from sales history. So if you are copying an order from sales history, if this is checked, it will use the order number as it was originally back then. Convert quotes to sales order with the next order number. So what this does is if you got a queue for your quote number sequence, and then you turn it into a sales order, if this is turned on, it will just use the next sales order number for it and drop the quote number and save the quote number into another part of the database. Allow the user to set sales number on new orders. So this is a user-defined order number. It's an alphanumeric, so if this is set, the user can type in their own order number, but it does use the sequencing numbers that is set up in Business Vision as a default, but still allow the users to overtype that. In our reoccurring orders or standing orders, you can make it so that when you create a new standing order, that it defaults to monthly if you set the default recurring in here. And that same holds true for rental orders.